Hey there. I want to talk about living without ADHD medication. I talk a lot about my experience with ADHD medication, and I throw a lot of criticism at the medication and the atmosphere of ADHD and ADHD influencers. I wanted to move to I don't know. A lot of people who are ADHD influencers or who participate in what I call the Great Dialogue, which is the constant discourse of everything that we have as a group. When it comes to ADHD, most of the people you find who are talking about ADHD are very involved with ADHD in terms of they're constantly treating their own ADHD. And I believe that when someone begins to monetize their ADHD, they can never let it go. And through that process, they are always engaging with their ADHD, and it's sort of like, I don't know if they'll ever leave it behind because it's become such an integral part of their identity. And I saw some of this with myself. Of course, I wrote a book about ADHD, but the more I think about it, it's not, I wrote a book about my life, and ADHD became a big part of my life. And without that book, ADHD is no longer part of my life, really. I do sometimes get emotional. I do sometimes lose my keys. I can't find my wallet. These are pretty much, that's the manifestation of ADHD. However, I worked really hard to learn how to function, and I'll get into that in a minute. I do want to talk about how I did it and why it's not for the faint of heart, and that there's no solution. You know, Adderall will treat your ADHD. Adderall will, if you can't get work done, and you take an Adderall, you will get work done. We know that. That is known. So there is not another solution like Adderall. You'll find in some of the discourse that I've created personally, some of my own kind of canon about ADHD will show that I've drank ayahuasca, will show that I've done breath work, will show that I've tried so many supplements. And I'm here to say that none of that is responsible for my ADHD without. None of those things cured my ADHD. None of those things made my ADHD more manageable. All those things did was help me get to know myself better, which I think is the way that you treat ADHD without medication, is know thyself. Know who you are, be aware of it, and learn how to work with yourself. And essentially, a lot of people in the ADHD community don't like saying this, but to me, in my experience, this is what helped, was growing up, maturing, understanding parts of myself that belonged to a more immature self, and to readily acknowledge that and work diligently to get in front of that. I want to share, before I go, I want to share with you a timeline of the time I stopped taking medication till here, and talk about all the mistakes I made, how challenging it was, what I did, and hopefully from there you can glean some recommendations if you're in the position where you take ADHD medication and you want to stop. Because I do not struggle with my ADHD medication withdrawal. I wouldn't say that I struggle with ADHD, but I say that I live with it, whatever that is. I don't even consider it a disorder. I don't consider myself disabled. I don't even like to really call myself neurodivergent. I just think I'm a unique person with a special a special brain, if it needs to be that way, but I do not think of it as limiting. I don't consider myself disabled. I don't think I need any accommodations from the world. I just need to rise to the occasion of the demands of this world, which are insane. And there are a lot of factors in my childhood and in potentially the wiring of my brain that makes living in this world hard, but I've come to the realization that it's not meant to be easy, and if life is hard, then you have an opportunity to get strong. That's all. Some people might disagree and say that I'm ableist for this, but that's fine. That's what I believe. And if it's ableist, then I'm sorry. And no intention of saying this way is better. No intention of saying of med shaming anybody. But if you want to take the path of being on medications for a long time and then stopping, then I'm someone who's done that, and perhaps I can share some wisdom with you. Recently, a good friend reached out to me, and they said that they were recently diagnosed with ADHD, and they know me, and they know who I am, and they had asked if I had any advice, because they certainly were being offered medication. So I want to share the responses I shared with her, because I think they kind of encapsulate at least my, someone basically saying, what do you do? And I think that this gets it. So just let me find the message. So I'm not going to share her message because that's personal, but I'll share my responses. So I've tried lots of supplements and methods and techniques that have benefited me. To simplify this approach would be to say that you have to adapt yourself to yourself in a way that either overrides some frustrating defaults or modifies your surroundings to match what's happening internally. But as far as supplemental stuff, there's caffeine, there's Go-To Cola, there's Bacopa, Rhodiola, there's nootropics. There are things out there you can take to help your chemistry become proficient, or to modify your chemistry. We're trying to modify our chemistries, and I'm not saying that there's no food and there's no drinks that can help. Mushroom supplements, be it lion's mane and reishi, or of course the psilocybins, and people are experimenting with this. Although I would caution anyone to say, don't go to anything that is external for the growth that you need to have. No matter what, you'll never find a perfect elixir that's going to fix you. The only thing that can fix you is your relationship to growth, and an etching into yourself a new mindset that works hard, or does whatever it is that those medications did for you. You got to figure out how to do it on your own. You have to jumpstart it. There has to be a manual override somewhere in there, and I am living proof that it's possible, but I'm also living proof that it's hard, because I'll tell you my story, but we'll get there. I said I'm always working toward using nothing, and consider ADHD as something that is actually a coping mechanism to trauma and personal struggles. So the more I grow as a person, the more manageable my ADHD symptoms become. So the more I learn about trauma, past experiences, and how they can, trigger and etch, and these certain nervous system responses that I have from, not a terrible but challenging childhood, most of it which I consider my traumatic experience was being diagnosed and medicated. So it's kind of like my ADHD, I think, was made by my ADHD. It's very circular and it's very upsetting, and I'm not going to go into I don't want to blame anyone anymore. I don't want to blame people for not buying my book. I don't want to blame people for medicating me. I just want to help people. So I'm so sorry that I've been selfish and in my head about this entire process. If you're someone who follows me and this stuff, so forgive me for not just being here to help, because this is the information I have, and some people want it, some people don't. I need to get out of my own way with my own blah, blah, blah. Then blah, blah, I talked personally, and I told this person that if you start Adderall, it's going to help you immediately. But it will leave wake when you're done, and it will confuse your own expectations of yourself. So what I mean by that is, you take, let's say you go to work every day and you perform at a 5, and you're like, oh, if only I could perform at a 7 or an 8. And then you take an Adderall and you go to work and you hit a 9. And you say, well, that was awesome, and I don't ever want to not do that. And so you take another Adderall, you hit a 9, and you keep doing well on Adderall. But then when you stop the Adderall, it's going to be hard to get back to a 5, if you catch my drift. You're going to be more deficit than you were. The chemical imbalances, there's no chemical imbalance like there's a withdrawal of these medications, because these medications really aggressively and really forward just modify your chemistry. So if you take these medications and then you stop, your ADHD is worse than it was when it starts. And what makes the withdrawal really hard, and I've talked about this at length, is that there's this sort of confusion. You say, is this my ADHD or is this a withdrawal? And it's a combination of both. But I think if you're choosing to withdraw these medications, or you're considering it, know that you're going to take them both on. Okay, you're not just going to handle the withdrawal, you're going to handle this ADHD. It's time to take the gloves off and get into this thing. Okay, there's a certain maturity that I prolonged, and I can't speak for you because I don't know you. But I know that in my case with the ADHD, it was either get on meds or get to fucking work and get this shit together. So, I'll give you the timeline. I didn't choose to quit medications. Medications quit me. My insurance didn't work. It lapsed. I was like, oh, I can't find my medications. I called people. I did illegal things. I got the I needed these drugs. And so I did all kinds of things. I never was able to secure another prescription. So I said, fine, I'm going to use this opportunity to treat this like a project. And I'm going to be, and so I started reading. And I read things that made me very aware that all the suicidal thoughts I was having, or all the depressive thoughts I was having, all the sadness, all this self-hatred that I was experiencing was chemical. So I didn't take it seriously. If it seemed like it was coming out of nowhere, I would have said, wow, I'm really depressed and I need help. But I was always reminding myself that what's going on is the withdrawal of the medication. And I figured that, that by using these medications, I am going to a bank of focus and I am borrowing focus. I'm not making deposits of energy. I am borrowing. And then I could not pay back, and the debt came, and the debt came big, and that they had to collect a lot. So I had debt of energy, of focus, of dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, and the other one. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I owed. I borrowed and borrowed and borrowed so much synthetic energy that it was time to pay the piper. And what I did is, one of the exercises I did, I said, okay, this is the project. And I said, the last time I was a person who didn't have a relationship with amphetamines, I was 7.5 years old. Let's go to that kid. Let's check in with that kid. And let's think about him. So I thought about the 7.5-year-old version of myself as a little boy who needed a little bit of discipline. And I don't mean discipline. I mean self-discipline. This is a kid who needed structure. I didn't have much structure. I didn't know how to build structure. And I still didn't. And I've admitted that to myself rather than saying, the world is a wretched place. It's an unnatural place. I need unnatural substances just to meld with it. Stop that. Okay? Yes, the world is difficult. It's been difficult forever. You read books. People don't talk about how easy Earth was. And of course, the Industrial Revolution and its consequences only made everything harder. But that doesn't mean you have to quit and give up and use drugs. The world is chaotic. Just, you can get into it. You can be ADHD without medication. It's going to be hard, okay? But it's possible. And the reward is so sweet. Because I had this idea, this is the ADD, I'm going to go off topic real quick and I'll get back to the timeline when I realized I was 7. But I kept thinking, what if I was on a desert island, That was my thought, is that, let's say I was on an airplane, it crashed, we get a raft, and we get on a thing. Everyone's going to be building structure, hunting food, trying to signal planes, and I'm going to be sitting there thinking, I just can't do anything. I'm just tired. This is so annoying. Because in the withdrawal, that's where I was. I was a complainer. I was eating a lot. I was sleeping a lot. I was just... The opposite of what Adderall does is what the withdrawal does. If you're watching this video, you probably know that enough, and I don't have to explain it to you. Anyways, 7.5-year-old boy, what did I do? I joined a Kung Fu dojo. I'm actually wearing the shirt from it. And I started doing Kung Fu. That's kind of a stereotype, but I said, let's lean into it. Let's not resist the obvious. I don't have self-discipline, so I'm going to just focus on learning Kung Fu and learn these physical forms. Helped immensely. Better posture, learn how to focus, do uncomfortable things, finish it. Count to 10. Just like certain rules I needed, certain structure I needed. By identifying the problems and doing nothing but them, a lot of people say, find your strengths and stick with them. In the withdrawal of the ADHD medication and trying to become one with my ADHD and make friends with this evil dragon in me, I went straight to my weaknesses. My weaknesses were organization, discipline, and structure. So I just went to those. And further along I went, the more deeper I went into the things that were holding me back rather than, my strengths have always been creativity, fun, I don't know, clever, memory. Like I have, these are my strengths. And I said, well, I just have those. Where are my weaknesses? And they're at to-do lists, planning, calendars. All of this is where I struggled. And I made a lot of mistakes. I'll continue the story. After I did Kung Fu for a while, I got a job as a teacher, and that was fine. I was teaching electives. It's not like I wasn't that serious. I was teaching guitar, I was teaching ukulele, and I would just sit with kids and jam. And off the medication, more so than on the medication, more personable, better listener. I'm easier to be around. On the medications, I had this more kind of spookiness. I'll just leave it at that. But off the medications, I was very personable, I was very kind, and I was able to date, fall in love, and get married. And I do attribute that to my lack of medications, and I don't think that my wife would have liked the version of me that was on amphetamines all the time. So I am grateful for that, and for me, that was a net positive in all of my life. So I'm so grateful that it wasn't on medications when I met this wonderful woman, or else I don't think she would have enjoyed spending time with me. But nonetheless, I carried on, I kept working, and then I made a conviction that I wanted to work harder. I realized that I was starting to do hobbyist woodworking as another avenue of hard work. The first avenue of hard work was the wushu, the forms, the martial art. But I wanted more avenues to try to learn to work hard. And I said, I want to be able to work all day. Because before I would do this, I would do that. I was at the age of 23 or so, and I had never actually worked 40 hours a week except for one summer, and it was incredibly challenging. So I wanted to work 40 hours a week. So I got myself connected with a construction company, and I got on the job, and you had to be there at 7 in the morning, wake up at 6, work all day. It was a construction job. And after a month, I was fired, and because it was hard. But I didn't give up. I found an apprenticeship to do woodworking, and I was ready to fail at that too. A big part of this was how many more failures can I clock? Okay, I've been avoiding failure my whole life, and that has made me not do anything because I'm only doing the things that are surefire going to work. Like, teaching, you can fail as a teacher, but typically you don't know if you failed as a teacher until the kids have grown up. You can kind of float by as a teacher. But I wanted to put myself in positions, I would do what I was afraid of, and I was afraid of having a boss who would chew me out, and they did, and making mistakes with woodworkers, and they did, and asking for a raise, I did. All these things that I just hadn't done, I wanted to do them. And I worked as a woodworker for a good while, and I fell in love with it. And I started doing things on the side. I would work for the guy who taught me everything, and then I would go home in my parents' shed and continue to work. I found myself, once I found the thing I liked, and once I found a way to approach it, a system, because, go back, I did learn no, I won't go into the book buying, but once I was able to understand and kind of build up a mental structure of how I can do this all day, understand that there's a process, gather materials, make a plan, cut materials to size, assemble materials, and then finish, sand and finish. Like, that's a process. And no matter, even if that's a home renovation, demo, framing, drywall, finishing, sanding, painting, baseboards. Like, there's, maybe for people with ADHD, this works, or maybe it's just me, but by finding a process-oriented work, I can apply that process to other things, even writing a book, just to teach me that when you do work, you don't just sit down and go crazy. You work, you sit down, you set the camera up, you know what you're going to talk about, you talk, and then you edit it, and then you put it online. Like, I needed to pound into me process-oriented working. Clean up, like set the workspace, do the work, clean as you go, clean up, send an invoice. Like, get the work done. So once my wife got pregnant, I started my own business, and that's when I made all the biggest failures, because I was really confident. I was like, wow, I can do anything. Okay, I don't need ADHD medications. I can work 80 hours a week, and I did. I worked so hard. I took out debt in money, and I got in massive debt. I found that I was capable of working 80 hours a week. I found that I was capable of creating beautiful things with wood. I found that I was able to find jobs and work with clients, and I found that I was in way over my head, and I made huge mistakes. Huge mistakes. Massive mistakes. I had to file bankruptcy. And this happens with people in ADHD. We get debt. We spend impulsively. So I went right into the problem. And this is not good advice. Don't pull a bunch of debt. But find your problem and get into it, and it might be really challenging. This isn't even advice. This is just that. But just developing a work ethic that isn't reflective on a medication, isn't reflective that my work ethic is not infringed upon by anything but my habits, really. And I'm aware of how using my phone affects my ability to work. I'm aware of what foods affect my ability to work. I'm aware of caffeine, supplements. I don't drink alcohol. It's these certain things. But I will say that if you were supposed to ask me, what's the one thing that helps the foundation of your mental health that leads to not struggling with ADHD, it would be exercise, which is really simple. And because if the body if the body's good, then the mind has a container. So that's really been the best. And none of it is gonna feel. There were moments on ADHD medication where I felt like I was holding the wand, that I had the truth in my eyes, and that like there was a funnel of truth that was coming through my pen, and that kind of grandiose narcissism. It's diet mania, and I'm really grateful that nothing gets me that high on myself. I still think I have good ideas enough to make videos like this, but I don't think I'm the guy. I did think I was the guy, and I see a lot of these ADHD coaches. I'm not going to judge them right now, but there are a lot of ADHD coaches out there, and if they help you, that's great. But I think use that as still working to figure out how to hold yourself. And what I think maybe is so special about people with ADHD is they're incredibly unique. And being unique means there's not one solution. So if we all are unique in our own special way, how is it that there is one solution? So to boil down the point of why I said all this, it's that you have to get out there, you have to make your mistakes and know you're making your mistakes. Don't fear your mistakes. Acknowledge your mistakes and really ask yourself, what is this mistake teaching me? And if I don't consciously learn what this mistake is teaching me and integrate it into my approach henceforward, it's going to repeat itself. So be really conscious of that. And you have to etch these lessons into the core of your being and choose to change the way you live. Because nothing changes if you don't change anything. So be really, and because I think when I took the medication, I stayed the same. I had this certain sprite-like energy that stayed, but I don't think I was growing as a individual. And only until I exposed myself to the challenges that were in front of me, the challenges that I've been putting off by medication, was I given the opportunity to do so. And it was the most painful, difficult, challenging, blah, blah, blah thing of your life. But those challenging situations, if you go into them head first and choose to not just succumb, then that's the greatest opportunity for building strength that a person could ever be given. I think that's all I have to say. If you want to read my story, you can read my book. But I'm not. I just hope that if you needed this video, you got it.